Loading is typical state management for web development in order to render web page while waiting large dataset. In case of we are using pure React, then it will be client component, so isLoading with useState is the typical way to realize for that. However, when it comes to Next.js, we would not like to this way because once we use client-side component, we will lose many benefit of server-side component, which Next.js provided as default. Also, we need to make it loading for each single component or page that is not efficient way, and we want to apply for all or group of pages like layout component. Next.js provide loading UI based on React Suspense to make it simplify for loading state management and render UI. Let's check it how it works compared to classic style. Let's start with classic style for loading management with useState and useEffect as a simple React client-side component. Here I just import useEffect, useState, and skeleton component for render loading. Sleep function is just simulate delay for fetching data. And then I set up isLoading from useState as true for default. Fetch data function to call API for fetch some example data. Once API call finished, then it will set false for isLoading state. Then I make two different render part depending on isLoading state. If this is true, which is loading, then I will render loading skeleton, and if not, which is finished, then render just hello. Let's see how it work in browser. This is quite simple component, and I can see as expected. Moving into Next.js loading component. This is refactoring same functionality of loading state management by using Next.js loading. There are three components that we will define. One for this page component to render main contents after finished data fetch. Fetch data function is more simplify. In page component, if there is empty of some data variable, then we do get some data function to fetch data and throw as promise object. Next step is to create loading.tsx, which is going to fallback component while data fetching. This component is just define what you want to render during loading, so for me it is just skeleton. Finally, we make it on layout.tsx. Next.js loading is based on React Suspense, so that we wrap with React Suspense component, and fallback is to set loading component. Let's see how it works on browser. This is no much change compared to previous example, but it works as expected again. For third example for server-side component. This is just removing use client from previous example for server-side component. This is page component, which is render main contents after finished data fetching. And loading is exactly same as before. Layout.tsx is also same as before with using React Suspense. Let's just confirm browser behavior is same as before. Here is server-side component and it work as expected perfectly.